Perfectionism in The Sims 4 can be paralyzing, and I think that it might even be ruining your love for the game. So today, I want to break down some of the ways that perfectionism can manifest in Sims 4 players, what it's doing to how we feel about the game, and some methods that I have found to help me overcome my Sims 4 perfectionism that I'm hoping that you'll find useful too. I'll be talking most specifically about how I apply these tips to playing in my Sims 4 Forever world, but I think that they can be more universally applied too. But before we dive into things, my name is Yasmin, and my mission here on the channel is to help serious simmers like you to find fun and meaningful gameplay in your favorite life sim games. My question of the day is, have you ever struggled with Sims 4 perfectionism? If so, how, and what tips and tricks would you maybe give to other players if you found ways to overcome that yourself, or maybe if you're still working to overcome that? Let us know in the comments down below, and let's dive into the video. Now, before we move too far into this video, I want to go over some thoughts and feelings, whether they be consciously or subconsciously, that might run through a lot of our minds as we're playing The Sims 4 that relate to our desire to have everything in the game to be perfect. Whether that be how our Sims look, how other Sims that we're not even playing with look, how our Sims houses look, and even how we use our time in the game. I, for one, have always liked to try and run my game very efficiently, so having Sims try to make money or build skills all the time. But anyway, I digress. I am naming these thoughts that we are going to be talking about in a second the perfectionist fallacies, because after experiencing these in the past myself, I have now come to realize that these really are, in my opinion, falsehoods that are inhibiting our ability to play and enjoy the game stress-free in a way. So the first one is that you can/are able to control everything in the game all at once. This is a lie, or again a falsehood, I would argue, because especially if you have a lot of DLC for The Sims 4, there is simply too much to control, too many Sims, too many lots. So try as you might, even if you use the help of mods to maybe try and help you with controlling your Sim population and lots and everything, I don't believe that you can unless you literally let it become everything and the only thing that you do in your game. And I should actually make a little note of clarification just here, that if you are the type of player that adores build buy mode and CAS, and that is where you get your joy from the game is in those game modes, please don't feel like this video is kind of dogging on you for that in any way. This video is intended for the types of players that feel like they have to hang out in those game modes rather than in live mode where they maybe want to be. So as that is, where you're getting to tell your Sims stories and really experience life with them, shockingly, in live mode. But I just wanted to make that note of clarification because I am definitely the kind of player that has felt perfectionism in terms of having to be in those other modes rather than wanting to be. But the next kind of perfectionist fallacy that I want to talk about is the idea that you have to control every Sim in your save file and world all at once. I've seen this a lot in the comments of my videos about making a forever world and stuff like that, with folk expressing that they feel like they have to be able to make the rest of the world around their active households perfect, and that level of desire for control over the rest of their game is inhibiting their ability to enjoy the game. And so now I would like to kind of dissect why that might be for a quick second. So I'm pointing out these fallacies because even though the game allows us the power to control everything and micromanage it to filth, I don't think that this means that we have to exercise this power. In fact, I would argue now that any attempt to fully control the world really is just wrecking your love for the game rather than it being what enables you to enjoy it. I don't blame you for having this feeling though. Perfectionism fundamentally concerns our ability to control a situation, in this case being our game. And let's be real, the world is kind of on fire right now, so our desire to make our game all pretty and perfect might be a sneaky way of our our brains trying to tell us or trying to find a way to find order in a very disordered real world. On a much less serious note, I don't think that the game's aesthetic in general allows for much bandwidth of imperfection, as unlike The Sims 3, for example, I would argue that imperfection really sticks out like a sore thumb in The Sims 4, which makes it even harder to ignore. However, as I've noticed, I do think that these fallacies are having a negative impact on your ability to enjoy the game, so let's dive into those. So let me take you on a little walk just here, okay? You've just got out of Create a Sim, you have made a gorgeous sim, might I say, and you have plopped down into the most basic Sims 4 starter house. You then might decide to spend an hour and a half either tearing down and rebuilding that home, or the same amount of time looking on the gallery for the perfect home, and then also doing, a couple of your own little renovations just to get it exactly how you like it. You then head into live mode. You send your sim out on the street because it's time to find a friend, and all of the sims that you come across kind of ugly, honestly. Like, you're not really feeling their randomly generated outfits. It's just not a vibe. So you pick one that you think is the most salvageable cause and you give them a nice little makeover, okay? You get out and then yay, you have a cool friend that you can take lots of photos with, and it's really exciting and fun. And before you know it, you have spent about 5 hours in this play session, not necessarily in live mode, but just flitting between cast and build by to try and get everything looking all nice and just how you like it, but having not really achieved much in the game in terms of building a life for the sim that you initially created. So you come away feeling maybe a little bit hollow from that gaming experience. But so all of this is to say is that the first impact of your Sims 4 perfectionism is that it is distracting you from making actual progress in your game in live mode and furthering your Sims' lives. The next one is overwhelm. As you start to make a couple of changes here and a couple of changes there, everything then starts sticking out a lot more, and then you got the world map, and then you click into a different world that you're gonna have your sim travel to, and then oh my god, it's happening all over again. And it just starts getting very overwhelming very quickly. And so this is one issue. However, a further one that then stems from this overwhelm is then you likely wanting to just kind of put down your game. And this might be fine for you. However, here on the channel, we like to talk about playing in a forever world and committing to one save file for the long term. Now, as you play through the game, things can get messy, things can move about the place, and so that's why this sense of overwhelm and this burning desire that can be bred from it of, I just need a new start, I need everything to be fresh again, is the biggest enemy of playing in a forever world. And I do think that all of this, if we kind of look at the little flow chart that we've generated here, all of this comes from perfectionism. And so I now want to move on to talk about some methods for how I have kind of either been enacting myself or that I think could really help, especially players that are really focused on the aesthetic side of things, to be able to maybe put that aside and really be able to just lock in on enjoying your game rather than feeling all of these shoulds and coulds and just all of this good stuff, or not so good stuff, I probably should say. But before we get into those tips, if you've maybe found this video insightful or a little bit useful so far, I'd be really grateful if you considered dropping a like or even subscribing to the channel. Doing those things, as well as watching the video to the end, tells YouTube's algorithms that my videos are worth showing to more serious simmers like you that also might be struggling with their own sense of perfectionism in the game. The link to become a channel member is also down below, where you can get fun perks like exclusive live streams and all of that good stuff. But right, enough of my spiel, let's move on. My first tip is not just one that I recommend to people that struggle with perfectionism in The Sims 4, but also for any player that's wanting to start a forever world in the game, and that is to hone in on one neighborhood at a time. This is where you're gonna need to start practicing getting your blinkers on, literally like, okay, and you're gonna pick one neighborhood in one world, and this is where you're going to focus all of your efforts, okay? I hear a lot of players when, they comment on my videos and say that they want to start a forever world, that they're going to start by ripping out every single sim and lot in the whole save file, and that then they're just going to start like adding stuff back in. No. Firstly, this is kind of counterproductive in my mind to getting started with a forever world, because it should not take tens of hours of preamble in the other modes to finally actually get into live mode. And this is still the case when you just hone in on one neighborhood, okay? So you don't want to go ahead and start by ripping out every lot in that neighborhood and every sim. You're just gonna leave it as it is, okay? You're gonna pick this one neighborhood though, and you're gonna play here for a long time, okay? So make sure that you try and make it one that you like. For me, I picked Foundry Cove, and I've basically been playing in it for 6 months straight. With like a few other little bits and bobs like elsewhere in my worlds, but mainly it's Foundry Cove, okay? And so yes, you're gonna pick this one neighborhood and you're gonna start with just one household. And then as you play with this one household and you start to really fall in love with the sim, you might then start realizing, hey, the neighbor across the road, they're my friend now, and now I think that I'm gonna give that house a little transformation. Or that empty house across the way, I'm actually gonna like rip that out and make something that fits the aesthetic of what my first sim is doing. And then I'm actually feeling like getting my second sim going now, and I'm gonna do that over there, you know? And so that is where you're just over time, and you cannot rush this process. You're just then gonna slowly transform this one neighborhood into something that you are loving, and that is then aligning with just like, wow, it's perfect and it's beautiful, okay? But that does not happen instantly. That happens over time. And next is to just focus on your currently active sims or the households that you're rotating between and their periphery sims. Because one question that I see a lot of people focusing on when it comes to starting a forever world is to, you know, how do you deal with aging, and how do you keep all the sims the same age, or, you know, at least like relative to each other and everything, even if you're only playing with a couple of different households. And my kind of retort usually is, why do you care about sims that live in a different world that you're not like, that aren't connected in any way to the sims that you're actively focusing on? And this is just a reminder that, so say right, let me give you an example of how I'm enacting this in my own forever world. So I'm playing with Cassandra Goth, right? And she of course is the daughter of Bella and Mortimer, and then they also have their son Alexander. So as Cassandra is aging in my forever world, I think I've probably done this about twice in total, but I will go into the main goth household and I will age the sims up relative to what's happening with Cassandra, because she's the sim that I'm focusing on. I don't play with the goths, you know, like the rest of them, but I do like to have them stay relatively close in, you know, what like canonically, I guess you could say, they would be relative to Cassandra. But once again, all of this is to say, get your blinders on and don't be stressing about sims that aren't connected directly to your sims, because once again, in my opinion, this is the fastest way to just slam yourself into a wall of overwhelm. Now, my next tip focuses less so on the players that struggle with perfectionism in terms of how everything looks in their game, but more for players like me who would struggle with everything being run super efficiently and constantly just having your sims do something, you know, whether that be building skills, making money, etc. And I am fine with managing to do this when it's just one sim in a household, but obviously usually over time you start adding in a couple more folks, whether it be a partner, children, maybe a friend that needs a place to stay for a little while, etc. And so then your house starts getting a little bit busy, and then you start pausing the game more and more to make sure that you queue up the actions so that everybody's always doing something. But then, oh no, the game's cancelled them all, so then you have to, it's just a whole thing. And so one method that I have found to help myself with this is to try focusing on one sim at a time. So you could have like one day in game where you just focus with one sim, and then you ignore all the other sims in your household and stuff and just kind of let autonomy take the wheel with it all. But it's a great way to make sure that you're still kind of, you know, having your sim that you're maybe most attached to, building all the skills and doing all the things, but also, you know, rotating between them all and making sure that you're not, once again, getting overwhelmed. You're not constantly paused, you're letting time pass. And also another great thing about this is sometimes you might see interactions and general things that you can work into a sim's story in the moments when you're just not controlling your sims and they go off and just do something random. That's what I quite like. For example, now Now, this will either dissuade or persuade some of you guys. One of my Sims, Summer Holiday, actually died on one of these days when I was focusing on her wife Jade during a day when we were live streaming. Sounds funny. That's like honestly bred like one of the biggest points of lore in my entire Forever world, so make of that what you will, but I found it to be very helpful. And this next tip is for especially the players that are wanting to jump into the Forever World playstyle, but are maybe a tiny bit hesitant. And this was actually brought up to me in a comment that I read recently that I don't think I'd ever actually made the connection in my brain myself. And this is to try your best to take the power out of the word forever. Now, obviously, when you start a Forever World, the intention and the goal behind it is to make this be the one save file that you play in forever, the one ring, you know? And I know that a lot of players see this word as an opportunity to just pile on the pressure in terms of having everything be perfect and to, you know, have to adore every single sim that you make and for every, you know, once again, for everything to be perfect. And that just shouldn't be the case. And in fact, I would argue that a Forever World is, in my experience, I've enjoyed it even more since I've let everything get a little bit messy in the background, you know? I've let Sims move about the gaff and marry people that they're not meant to marry and, you know, move everywhere, and I think that it's made it more enjoyable. But that's just me. But my tip here is to maybe reframe the word Forever World, or, you know, the term Forever World if you're finding it a little bit overwhelming, and maybe just calling it your save file, you know, and try once again to just take the power out of the word if that is being a stumbling block for you in terms of starting one or maybe continuing with one long term. Now, my next tip is if you do find yourself wanting to indulge your perfectionism, maybe it's just a little bit too strong one day and you have to give in, is to set timers. So say for instance, you want to give your sim, you know, your Sim's pal a quick makeover, but oh no, you've been in cast for half an hour, whoops, okay, right, now's the time, get out a timer, set it for 5 minutes, and then that is it. Only give yourself 5 minutes to finish off this outfit. Or again, in build mode, for example, I know years ago the 10-minute build challenge was such a big thing where people were just trying to build houses in 10 minutes and that was it. Maybe you could do it for like a 10-minute room makeover timer, or, you know, even just building the shell of a really basic house if you are really just wanting to get into gameplay but you feel like build mode is kind of getting in your way. It's a little sneaky trick to try and gamify these aspects, which I think can be really fun and honestly just like a fun little challenge for yourself. And once again, if you do really feel like you want to go in, and maybe this is for the kind of perfectionist player that does really enjoy build mode and CAS and everything, and this is to enact your beautification efforts via gameplay. I did mention this in a video fairly recently, but I really love this idea, so I want to share it again in case you might have missed that one. And so say for instance, right, this might require a couple of packs like the Dream Home Decorator pack, but you could actually have one sim or maybe like a little household or a club's worth of sims that you rotate between, have them be in the stylist career and the interior decorator career, and then gradually take gigs that will take you around the whole world and to see so many different sims to gradually decorate houses and change up outfits. And you could even use what's it called from high school years, Plopsy, the thing where you can make and sell outfits. You could even try that system as well. I don't have that pack, so I don't know, but I'm sure you guys know what I mean. And as well, this means that then your sims can have a life around this effort of yours, but also make some money. And generally, I think this could just be a really fun idea that I might even do at some point in my own Forever World. Now, my next tip is somewhat similar to the idea of kind of gamifying everything by setting timers, but we'll get to this in a second. And I want to talk now on the idea that the kind of perfect item might not exist. Once again, if you are obsessed with making everything glorious and stunning in build mode and CAS as well, sometimes, and I'm gonna call some of you out here lovingly and respectfully, sometimes you guys have crazy ginormous like CC folders, okay? I have heard some of you guys say that it is gigabytes big, which means that you have a lot of options for things. And sometimes you can spend so long, and I've been there in the past as well, but sometimes you can spend so long agonizing over finding the perfect piece of clutter or the perfect top for your sim or whatever it may be. And sometimes this just doesn't exist. And so what I found can be really helpful is to use the features in the game to try and help you curtail the rabbit hole that you can go down in terms of, again, searching for the perfect thing. And that is to just use the filters. So you could either filter by a specific color or even by the style of the item as well. That can be really handy. And then just challenge yourself to find the perfect item, but within this much smaller list, because decision fatigue really is a thing, and that, once again, I think is going to be your fastest route to overwhelm and just burnout. So that's a tip just there. And my final tip is maybe gonna be a little bit of a meta one, I guess. But this is gonna be all around managing your content consumption when it comes to The Sims. So if you watch a lot of Sims creators, and sometimes, and importantly, you come away from those, content consumption sessions feeling not so great in yourself, and maybe you're asking, or you're kind of saying statements in your head like, man, I wish that my save file looked like this or had lore as deep as that, or I wish that my builds were this great, or I wish, and you're just comparing yourself negatively to creators and content that you see online. Me a couple of years ago especially did this when I played Animal Crossing a lot more. And I just never felt like my builds and everything in that game were anywhere near as good as the ones that I saw online. And it was so demotivating to then play the game as well. But I feel like the same could be said in The Sims 4 as well, because I think that there are so many similarities between those games. But as they say, comparison really is the thief of joy. So sometimes it might be time to just, turn off the video, even mine as well. I won't be offended. I would rather you feel happy in yourself, and take a little break and come back when you feel like you've sort of reset a little bit. But with all of that, my loves, this is where I'm gonna end today's video. I do really hope that you might have found it useful and everything, especially if perfectionism is something that you really struggle with in the game. But before we head out, I have to thank my amazing channel members for their support here. So starting off with our Tiberian members, we have Amy M, Bloody Porcelain, and Vanagander. Honestly, thank you guys so much. We also, of course, have all of our Soul Piece members on the screen just here too. You guys are literally the best. I couldn't do this without all of your support and encouragement. But once again, my question of the day is, have you struggled with perfectionism in The Sims 4? And if so, how? And do you have any of your own methods for tackling it? Let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to hear me yap on some more, click on the video on the screen right now, as YouTube has picked it out just for you. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.